If you don't have boundaries, you probably need some. But if you think you need boundaries, you actually don't. So boundaries, let me explain. Boundaries are an important tool. There's nothing wrong with boundaries. But the problem comes when, and I've seen that in myself and in people I work with, we think we need boundaries. We hear things like, oh, I just need to set better boundaries. I just don't have any boundaries. I need to put a boundary there. And it sounds like that is the solution to our relationship issues, to our setting up for ourselves issues. And we think if we could just put the boundary, then it would solve the situation. And that's when it becomes problematic, because the truth is, boundaries is a tool. It's not actually the problem. The problem is much deeper than that. Hi everyone, welcome to With Kind Awareness. I'm Nejma, your guide, and today we're going to dive into this juicy topic of you don't need boundaries. What are you talking about? Of course I need boundaries. Everybody talks about that. Well, by the end of this today, you'll understand what boundaries actually are, when to use them, and when to actually start letting them go and work on a deeper level to free yourself at another level. So stay tuned until the end, because this could actually completely transform your life if you apply it. So why do people feel that they need boundaries? Oftentimes it's because they have allowed in their relationships things that they are not aligned with. They've allowed other people to walk all over them, some people will say. But how can someone walk all over you if you haven't allowed it? That's a very interesting inquiry to be in. And the thing is, and a lot of us already know that we are willing or unwilling participants in this whole dynamic, and that we actually have a say, but it's challenging to have that say. And so we think that, okay, I just need to put a boundary here so people start to understand what line to cross or not cross with me so I can feel safe, not walked all over. And so actually, unconsciously, don't have to speak up, don't have to say enough, don't have to say stop because, hey, look, I have this boundary. And so I'm kind of like absolving myself from speaking up in the moment, and I'm just relying on this, I have a boundary here, as a rule of interacting with me. So if we think about it, it kind of comes from a disempowering place. Setting boundaries might be necessary for someone who has never really learned to stand up for themselves. Just like if you break your leg, while you heal, you might need some crutches, right? You might walk on crutches for a little bit. But if you stay with the crutches and never really allow yourself to wobble and start to learn to walk again and build these muscles in your legs to be able to walk again, you'll get stuck with crutches for the rest of your life, most likely. So crutches are useful. Gosh, if you break your leg, you need to be able to have some support. Boundaries are just like that. So if you're really in a state where you just never stood up for yourself, you've just kind of said yes to everything, you've let things happen that weren't in line with you, you might want to start by setting boundaries at first. But this conversation is also important for you because we don't want you to just start using crutches for the rest of your life. For example, my son's 8 years old currently, and lately he's been very complainy about food. Has always been a thing. Parents out there, do you know how much kids complain about food? And it's kind of annoying, but hey, we breathe. So, but that started to like amp up to a next level. Everything was a complaint. Even the things he used to like, there was always something. Then it was about activities and kind of like being a bit more sloppy around helping around the house and the certain things that he used to do with emptying his bag and his lunchbox and things like that. So there came a point, a breaking point for me where I was like, okay, we need to set some boundaries here. And so I wrote things down, I sat with him, and we went through what happened without making him wrong, just kind of like explaining how things are felt and his responsibility and my responsibility and kind of coming to this agreement. And he asked me, He was very understanding because he had a sense that, of course, he knew what he was doing. He asked me to have a checklist. Can I have a list of these things so it's easier for him to know, okay, when I come from home, I empty my backpack, I put the lunch on the table and da 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 da. So there's kind of like these little things that we are making sure that he was starting to pick up. He never used a list. Why? Because the boundary was set, but it wasn't really about following the rule or the boundary. It's about understanding the principle of the boundary itself. And a little disclaimer here. I'm speaking here about boundaries in usual day-to-day situations. There might be situations that are more abusive or trauma induced. So I just want to make it clear here that we're talking about regular situations and any situation of abuse that go beyond the scope of the usual. That's not this conversation, and that conversation has a different place. So just to make sure that we're on the same page here, we're talking about boundaries in the day-to-day, boundaries with our partners, with our friends, at work, boundary with ourselves and our families. Whenever there's a risk for your life, your safety, any abusive situation, it's a completely different conversation. Okay, so we understand why we might feel like we need boundaries because we don't feel super empowered for standing up for ourselves. We don't want to create conflicts. We don't want to disturb others. We don't have to feel maybe the discomfort of saying no, of people being upset, of maybe losing love or acceptance, right? There's kind of all this baggage and stuff happening that we lead us to not set any boundaries and just kind of maybe go with what it is and what people want. And then it kind of starts, because it's not comfortable, because it's not who we are, it starts to spark this desire of like, I need to put a boundary because this doesn't work for me anymore. Great. And if you have never set boundaries before, that's an amazing starting point. But what are boundaries? If we look at them, I just said they're like crutches, right? Boundaries is kind of an other way to control. It's kind of an other way to feel safe, feel in control of our environment by setting rules for how we expect people to interact with us. And there's two types of boundaries. There's controlling boundaries and empowering boundaries. So here's an example. If I decide that after 9 p.m. is my winding down time and I'm not going to be taking any calls, a controlling boundary would be, don't call me after 9 p.m. And then, of course, people don't listen. They do what they want. People. We're people too, so we get it, okay? They will call after 9 p.m. They will text. They will try to get attention from me because they want to. But if I'm in a controlling boundary where I'm like giving the responsibility to the other to meet and respect my boundary, I suddenly feel violated. I suddenly feel people don't respect me, don't respect my boundary. And I start to build bitterness and trigger and upset and frustration and resentment and sadness, perhaps even all these emotions towards the people. And either I isolate even more and think, well, then if they don't respect me, screw them. Or I let go of my boundaries because people don't respect them anyway. An empowering boundary is different. An empowering boundary is, I am the holder of my boundary. I'm not externalizing my power. I'm not expecting others to meet the boundary for me. I'm meeting and respecting my own boundary. So that sounds like someone calls me after 9 p.m. I expected that. People will people. But I'm not going to answer. I might even put my phone on, do not disturb, and not even see it coming. And the next day, if someone's upset because, I tried to call you and goes around all this situation, I'm actually able to stand for my boundary and explain, well, after 9 p.m., I'm so sorry. I put my phone on do not disturb. It's my winding down. So I didn't even see your call coming in. If it's an emergency next time, call twice in a row. I'll see your phone call coming in and I'll be able to support you, but only if it's an emergency, because I really need this time to kind of calm down and have good sleep and whatever the reason is. The reason why we don't set empowering boundaries most often, it's because we don't want to be in the conversation where people are upset that we're holding up the boundary. Would rather explain the boundary and then them respecting it. That way we don't have to handle anything, right? But that is a recipe for frustration and conflicts because now we feel like people don't respect us. But of course they won't. It would be so heavy. Think about it. It would be so heavy if there was all these people in our lives that all had different rules of engagements and boundaries that we had to know about and constantly respect to be able to engage with them peacefully. Imagine that. And some of you who are listening, because I've done that too, you've been trying to do that. You've been trying to like meet everybody's rules, and you probably noticed it's freaking exhausting. It's freaking draining. And maybe you'd rather not even have interactions with people because there's all these rules of engagement. But how amazing does it feel when you engage with someone that own their own boundaries, that have empowering boundaries, and they don't put expectations on you to meet anything. They are taking responsibility for their stuff. You can just be yourself. What? That feels freaking amazing. There was a time in my life where I was so focused on boundaries, I called them expectations, which is kind of a type of boundary. I was looking to set expectations all the time, make them specific, precise, and make sure that the other person knew and was in full agreement before anything. Because I didn't want to have to deal with any upset, misunderstanding, or anything like that after the fact and having to feel that negative or uncomfortable emotion. So I was like, let's just make sure we have our cards on the table. It's like everything was a little bit like here's our contract of engagement in various situations. And that was my way of controlling because I didn't want to have to stand for myself later on. I didn't want to have to like face someone who says, oh, you should have done this and that. No. Look, we had an agreement. You agreed to these terms, even though we didn't sign anything, right? And I thought that was keeping me safe. But what it was is that it was adding so much weight to relationships. And of course, people don't, even if you agree all this, they forget. They change their mind. They conveniently forget. Or they just disagree suddenly. Or they say that's not what happened. There's still space for misunderstanding, changing the mind, all these things. So all this free work can be useful, and setting expectations is also a powerful tool. But used to the extreme like I did was not coming from a good place. It was coming from this desire to control everything so I didn't have to deal with the discomfort. So what do we do instead? What's the deeper truth on this need to set boundaries and expectations with others? The deeper work is increasing and working on our personal power, on our own unfolding, on our own self-responsibility, communication, handling of conflicts, and being able to be with the discomfort. Because ultimately, relationships can't be controlled. As much as we like to control them, if you're a control freak, a perfectionist, or whatever you call them, or you like controlling things and doing things perfectly and knowing the rules and following up, does it actually work? I mean, sometimes, but most of the time it doesn't. But it's so freaking heavy and it drains us. It's not the way. The way is to actually let go of these good girl layers, right? Because that's what it is. I'm going to do things right. I'm going to set the expectation. We're going to do this, And I'm going to listen, I did all the things. Why are you upset? I set a boundary. You're the one who didn't respect it. Those are good girl layers. We think that if we meet all the external stuff, we'll be safe. We want to step into our goddess. The goddess sets empowering boundaries. The goddess stands for her own boundaries. She doesn't expect others to meet them. If they do, sweet. If they don't, that's okay. Because she stands for hers. but she's also able to be flexible. That's the thing. When we get to a point where we're very much connected and we've undressed all the layers of stuff that's dimming our light and we're very connected to our truth, our essence, our goddess within more and more, now we don't need boundaries. We're able to flow and be in the moment to moment. Like the 9 p.m. winding down time doesn't have to be a 9 p.m. It might be one night, oh, it's 9:30. Someone's calling me. I'm picking up. I have the energy. Another day might be like, it's 8 p.m. I'm pooped. I'm actually putting my phone on do not disturb right now. Another day might like, I'm up. It's midnight. I was out in the town and someone's calling me. What? Hi, how's it going? I'm not like, how dare you call me at midnight? My phone would have been on do not disturb. I would not even have seen it. But I'm up and I feel like answering. At some point, when we're able to be in our personal power, when we take back our power and we're not expecting so much from other people in order to feel good, in order to be okay, things transform. And suddenly, we don't need the crutches anymore. And yet, at first, it's a bit wobbly, but then you gain back the strength and you get back into your walking because you knew how to walk before. Your goddess within is always been there, right? But as the time went and we just kind of picked up these layers of good girl, people pleasing, perfectionism, control, limiting beliefs, false identities, shoulds, have tos, all this stuff, that's kind of like metaphorically, we just kind of hurt our leg and we needed the crutches. But we're undressing all of that. We're healing. The crutches are there to for the period where we're still healing. But then when the healing ends, we need to be willing to put them down, be wobbly, holding on to the table, practicing, and then getting the strength back, and then just walking again. Because it's a remembrance. It's who we are. And then we can flow with every moment. And it's not as heavy. We can be with people peopling, however they are, and know this aligns with me, this doesn't align with me. I have the capacity for this. I don't have the capacity for that. Moment to moment. I don't need to set a laundry list of rules of how you're to interact with me if you want a relationship, because no one wants that. If you had laundry lists to meet, and maybe you have people like that in your life that have these laundry lists for you, how does that feel? Crappy. You want to engage with them? No, not really. But when you shine your goddess within, when you're able to be with others and you're in your power because you reclaimed it, even interacting with people who have laundry lists for you changes. It's kind of magical that way. Even if they're exactly the same people, you don't feel the same way about it. You don't engage so much with it. You don't get as charged from it. And things transform. For you, sometimes even for them, but not always, but at least for you it does. And that's the work of the queen. The queen is all about that self-responsibility, that reclaiming the sovereign power within. And then the interaction with others, the dealing of conflicts, the being in the conversation, that's the warrioress. That's the outward expression of our truth, which maybe starts with boundaries and then starts to merge into just the flow of the moment to moment, alignment or not, desire or not, want or not, capacity or not. And then when we add the layer of the lover on top of that, now we're able to receive people as they are and just love on them unconditionally. And then when we add the mystic, that's out of this world. So if you are activated by this conversation, if you're like, whoa, that's very interesting, I would like to be to that place where I set empowering boundaries and actually start letting go of boundaries altogether, but I'm not sure how to get there. Like, I don't know, like it just feels so unsafe. And what about this? And what if? And you have some concerns and you just want to have a bit of a clearer map. And maybe you've already let go of a lot of the good girl layers, but there's the more intimate layer that's a little hard to let go of because sometimes the top layers are easier to let go and then we get to a core one and we're like, oh, and you might need some support. Well, the good news is you can book a one-on-one call with me completely for free, called the Good Girl to Goddess Deep Mapping Plus Activation. And what we're going to do, we're going to go deep together in looking at like what's going on in these types of layers, what's going on. If you want to talk boundaries, we can talk about that, and then see where's your next level. How do you let go of certain things to start shining more of your goddess within and start letting go of these boundaries, start letting go of these need for setting boundaries and being able to be with others however they are, so that you're not as reactive in life, so that you have more thriving relationships, so that it doesn't have to be so heavy to be connected, so that you don't have to choose between being free and being loved. So check out the link, will be somewhere in the comments or the show notes. And I look forward to connecting with you one-on-one and supporting you on this. All right, this was it for me today. I love you so much. Thank you so much for listening. I don't take your attention lightly. Go set empowering boundaries and then just let go of them completely. All right, much love. Mwah.